We are launching in the new year our next version of our Designing Your Life workshop series. So we've done this a couple times. We're restarting in 2022. And this is really a time every other Wednesday or so where you can come together with Pathstream to talk about how to really design and create the career that you want to have. And tonight we're going to be focused on tips for making a career move in 2022. Great topic, great time, right? January, new year. So this is what we're going to be focused on tonight, and a couple of logistics. So you are welcome to ask questions throughout the session in the Q&A. That's the best place to put your questions versus in the chat. We'll also take questions at the very end, and you will get a recording of this workshop emailed to you after the session. All right, so a couple of introductions. My name is Lauren Pizer. I'm the VP of Learning Experience at Pathstream, and I'm joined tonight by my colleague, Brooke, who is on the Learning Experience Design team and has actually very recently joined Pathstream, and so has very recently been in your position, which is maybe people that are trying to transition careers or trying to get a job for the first time, or the 5th time or the 10th time. But Brooke is here to add some of her perspective as well to what we're going to cover tonight.
Absolutely. Thanks, Lauren, for the introduction. I'm so excited to be here, and I'm excited that you are all here. We are going to have a great conversation tonight.
Yes, thank you. So our goal is really to share some actionable tips and strategies for you as you consider your next career move. And that involves uncovering your interests, identifying what you want to do next, and how you might be able to do that. So we're going to cover all of these topics tonight. But I'd like to start us off with a quick poll, and I'm going to launch this right now. But my question for you is, where are you in the process of making a career move? So I just kind of like to get a sense of, in the audience, are people just starting to think about making a career move? Are people actively making that change? But I just launched a poll. You should all see that question. I'm going to keep it open for a couple minutes. Awesome. Keep those responses coming in. None of the above. Yes, Ramona, that should have been an option, but none of the above might apply to you, or all of the above, who knows? Okay, I'm going to end this poll and show you all of the results. We've got really good participation tonight. Thank you. Okay, so I'm going to share the results. I hope you can see these. But it looks like a nice range, but most people are either just starting to consider a career change, or they've looked at a few job postings, they've explored some careers, but most people are on the earlier end, right, of this journey. Awesome. Thank you for answering that. Okay. So let's get started. Why should you consider a career move in 2022? Well, I'm not sure if you've seen this in the news, but it's certainly been written about, but 2021 is and was the year of the Great Resignation. What does that mean exactly? Well, a couple things were happening. One, lots of people were and are unhappy and are quitting their jobs. So in just November, which is only a few months ago, 4.5 million employees quit their job in just 1 month. And in several recent polls that have gone out, we've seen that 70% of American workers are not happy in their jobs. So there's a lot of unhappiness. There's a lot of people quitting. And at the same time, there are lots of jobs that are unfilled. So there's 10.9 million open, there were 10.9 million open jobs in July. And there's a projected increase in new technology-oriented jobs between now and 2025. Specifically, there's an estimate that 149 million new jobs will be created in technology. And at the same time, 70% of companies are reporting a shortage of candidates, meaning that there's a lot of jobs that are going unfilled. So you've got people unhappy, people quitting their jobs, and then you have jobs that are, they're entering the labor market, the job market, and they are being inundated with a lot of options. Right? So there's a lot of moving around going on right now. Brooke, I'm curious if you've got anything to add about this. I know you recently wrote a blog about the Great Resignation. So anything else that I'm missing here?
I did. And I have thought about this. And you're hitting it right on the head, which as someone who's thinking about changing jobs or, there's huge opportunity. It's really a great time to be thinking about making a switch because there are so many jobs open. The thing that I would add is to even personalize it a little bit more. In fact, I did this today before our webinar. I went online and I looked, you can pick lots of different platforms. I went on Indeed.com. I just did this on my phone and I put in data and I looked in, I happen to be in the San Francisco Bay Area. So I put in data and I looked San Francisco Bay Area, 44,000 jobs somehow reference data. And that's just sort of in my immediate area. So this like 10.9 million open jobs is huge, but also what does that mean for you locally? Probably huge opportunity locally as well. So I think that's interesting.
Yes. Thanks, Brooke. So just because there are a lot of jobs available, it doesn't necessarily mean you need to do anything about it. But if you are in this category of people that are considering a career move, you might be feeling some of this type of way. So maybe you're feeling that, I sometimes enjoy what I do for work, but I don't feel like I'm being challenged and I'm not earning the salary that I'd like to. We hear people say that. We also hear people say, I can't stop thinking about work, but every time I do, I feel stressed and overwhelmed. I need to change. And we also have some students that are saying things like, I've been at the same job for 7 years and I don't feel like I'm growing anymore. I want to shift, but I don't know how or where to start. And that's many of the students that we meet at Pathstream. They've been in a job for a long time, but they don't even really know how to transition to the next phase. So maybe you're not growing or learning in your current role or finding meaning in your work. All of these statements might apply to you. But one of the first things I kind of want to make a point about is that there's actually a lot of options available to you, even though it might not feel that way. A couple of those options are that you could seek a promotion at your current company, right? It might not be feasible, but some people might be able to get a promotion at their current company if they're not feeling like they're being challenged. They could seek a promotion at a different company, right? So you could quit your job and go to a different company doing something similar to what you're doing. You could get a totally new role doing something similar to what you're doing at a different company, right? That's another option. But these last two options are really kind of what I want to talk about, which is you might want to find a completely new role within your current company or a completely new role at a different company, right? So these would be roles that don't leverage the skills that you currently have. They're kind of something totally new. And that's sort of what I want to talk about today. Because, I can help and talk to you about seeking a promotion at your current company, but I think we can have a richer conversation if we talk a little bit about your options, doing something totally new. But, the question really is, how do you uncover what new role might be a fit for you and might be the right fit, right? It might be the next thing that you can pursue. And that's a really hard question. And I've actually worked with students throughout my whole career helping them answer this question because it's really not an easy one. So we've created a framework that we use with our students, but it is a framework that we feel like is a very helpful one for discovering and uncovering your next role. So the first part of this framework involves exploration and exploring. And this is really about starting with uncovering your interests, your strengths, what you want from a career, and then kind of exploring what's out there, right? So that's the first step. The second step is narrowing in a little bit. So you've explored, you've figured out kind of what you're good at, what your strengths are, but now it's time to choose a couple of possible careers for you to investigate further. You don't have to take those jobs, right? Or you don't have to make any major decisions, but what are a few careers or roles that you want to investigate further? And then in the third step, it's really about making a very light commitment to one or two career options and exploring them with even more of your time, right? And the reason why this is a circle is because sometimes when you get to the commit phase and you've tried a couple things and you've committed to them, you end up having to go back to the drawing board because they didn't really work out the way you thought. And that might feel like a little bit of a failure, but that's actually a huge success because I'm going to say this multiple times tonight. Sometimes figuring out what you don't like is actually just as important as figuring out what you do like. Because it's sometimes very helpful to eliminate things from the list, right? And so that's why this is a circle, because sometimes we have to do this multiple times. So let's go through each step in a little bit more detail. And in the chat, Brooke is going to share out some of the resources that I'm sharing with you today, because there's some links I want you to look at. You don't need to look at them now, but just copy and paste them, because I think they'll be helpful for you. So in this first step, we want you to explore and uncover things about yourself as a professional. So I always say, start with your strengths. Meaning, what are you good at? Can you, if you were asked that question in an interview, do you feel like you could answer that question? Maybe yes, maybe no, maybe somewhere in between, right? This is a hard question, but what are the things that you bring to the table that blow other people out of the water, right? So one of the resources that I really enjoy, and I've done this with hundreds of students in a course I used to teach, is called Strengths Quest. So this is a online evaluation. It's not, you're not graded on it. It's just going to surface your top 5 professional strengths. And there is a student option here. This is a paid exam. It takes about, I don't know, 15 minutes. There's a student option. So if you are a student or you're thinking of becoming a student, I encourage you to take advantage of the offer, but it's $20 and it will surface to you your top 5 strengths. And you get to read about them, and they give you a lot of details about them. And it's just a really interesting process to understand and see somebody kind of put out there what you're good at. A second test that I really like is called it's just a personality test. And there's a lot of personality tests out there. Many of you maybe have taken them. There's a class of personality tests called the MBTI personality test. And this is a free test. This one's offered by a company called 16 Personalities, and it takes about 10 minutes. And it gives you some information on how you how you navigate decisions, kind of what you bring to the table. It kind of helps you to sort yourself along extroversion, introversion, emotional thinking versus more logical thinking. It really helps to kind of draw some insights around kind of your personality type, because we all think we're very unique, but there actually are specific personality types out there, and it kind of helps you to see which category you fall into. The third piece of advice I have, which is a little bit more vulnerable, but has yielded amazing results, is to sit down with people you trust in your work and ask them, what am I good at? Right? That sounds kind of weird, but I feel like over coffee, you could say something like, look, I'm going on a little bit of a reflective activity, and I've been thinking about my strengths, and I'm curious, what do you think I'm really good at? What do you come to me for at work? Right? So these are really good questions to be asking people in your life, because if you don't know who you are and what you bring to the table, it can be really hard to understand where you might want to go next. So another way to explore is to investigate what you enjoy about your current job. And maybe you say, I don't enjoy anything about my current job, but I promise you, I bet that there's something in there that you can get insight from. And so one of the ways that I recommend you explore what you enjoy about your current job is through something called an energy and engagement audit. And I'm going to explain exactly what this is, but this is a really great way to investigate what you enjoy. So the way this works is that you're going to analyze all of the activities that you do in a given day. And this will help to understand kind of what activities you want to bring into a future role and what activities you don't want to bring into a future role. Because as I said, what you don't like doing is also important. So the step-by-step approach for this is you just literally want you to take a piece of paper, and not right now, but later, I want you to write down all of the work activities that you do in a given day. And you can do this, like have this piece of paper on your desk or at your office when you're working, and just jot things down. And I'm going to show you some examples. And then I want you to rate each of the things you do on a scale of 0 to 10 in terms of how much energy you feel doing that activity. Is it 0, energy draining, or is this activity energy generating, 10? Then next to that number, I want you to write down on a scale of 1 to 10, how much engagement you feel doing this activity. So engagement can mean a lot of different things, but in this context, it means, are you bored out of your mind when you're doing this and just totally distracted, in which case that's a 0? Or are you so engaged that you're losing track of time when you're doing this? That's a 10. So let's look at an example of this. Okay, so this is a fictional character, Joanna. She's a receptionist. She doesn't love it. She wants to switch careers, but she doesn't really know to what. So she wrote down all of the major activities she did on Tuesday. She answered calls and returned voicemails. She organized the company's holiday party. She called vendors. She picked a menu. She did some data entry. She trained a new team member that just started. And she was working on a new system for processing vacation requests for her team. So these are just some of the things she did. And you can see she rated them on a 0 to 10 for an energy and for engagement. And when you look at this, you can see a couple things already from this information. So in the red areas here are things that have low energy and low engagement. She doesn't enjoy the calls and talking to clients that much. And she also doesn't enjoy the data entry, but she does enjoy planning, right? The party, training new people, creating systems. She does enjoy those things. They bring both energy and engagement. So it's clear that Joanna has really high energy and engagement around tasks where she is organizing, optimizing processes, and generally creating order where there isn't any. And she has less engagement around clients and manual tasks like data entry. So this is a really interesting opportunity for you when you look at your energy and engagement audit to ask yourself some tough questions like, what does this mean, right? If I don't like doing these things, but I do like doing these things, what could that mean for my current job and a future job, right? So this is a way to start journaling and reflecting on your current role, because on a daily basis, you're running around doing 100 different things. And this just gives you a minute to pause and say, what do I like and what do I don't like? So the final thing I want to say about the explore phase of this, which is the first step, is there's another thing that you can do to explore. And this is a concept called informational interviewing. And I'd love to see in the chat, have people heard of informational interviewing? Is this a concept that you guys know? Just put a yes in the chat if you've heard of it. Or no, yes. So maybe like a mix. Some people have heard of it. Some people haven't. Awesome. Thank you guys. Okay, so sometimes it's nice to note there's people here. So thank you for posting in the chat. So an informational interview is a really cool thing, and it's a little bit vulnerable and it's a little bit scary, but I'm going to break it down for you. So informational interviews are basically 20-minute conversations on the phone or on Zoom or in person, but kind of not in person that much anymore, where you talk to somebody for 20 minutes about what they do for a living, how they got there, and any advice that they have for somebody like you that's trying to figure out their career, right? And so you don't want to just like pick people randomly for this. You want to think about people that you know or that you kind of know that are doing something that's a little bit interesting to you. Like, oh, I know that my, boyfriend's sister is working in a sales role, and I feel like I'd be good at sales. So let me just take her out to coffee and talk to her for a few minutes about what she does, right? That's effectively an informational interview. It's not a conversation where you ask anybody for a job. Some people think that informational interviews are where you ask for a job, and I feel very strongly about this, as evidenced by the big red block here. But it's really a conversation where you build a relationship with someone, right? And they may think of you if an opportunity comes along, a job opportunity, but it's not about that. And that's something people get confused about. It's really about creating a network of people and creating relationships with people that you can go back to in your career for advice. And importantly, it's a mechanism to learn about somebody else. You can do as much internet research as you want about what it means to be a data analyst, but sometimes the best way to learn is to actually talk to somebody that is in that role that can give you some of that information. So that's effectively what an informational interview is. It's about learning and getting information and getting curious. It's not about asking for a job. And again, I'm going to say this again. Sometimes when you talk to someone and they tell you about their role and you're like, oh my God, I could never see myself doing that. That's super helpful information and data. It also helps you expand your network, and it also helps to know that like this can be intimidating, but actually anybody that's in the know in the career world is actually doing this. So every day in my inbox, I could expect to get a request for an informational interview from people that know me or people that don't know me at all. And when I get those, I'm like, okay, this is normal. This is an informational interview. And I'm seeing in the chat that some people are saying like, but I don't know anybody. And what's great about informational interviews is they are often with people you don't know and you've never met before. And so I don't want to go too much in depth because we've got a lot of stuff to cover, but I do want to tell you that in the upcoming weeks, I have a whole webinar devoted to informational interviewing. And it's one of our most popular webinars. We go into depth on how to do this and how to find people that might be able to help you, even if you don't know them. So this is a great opportunity. The webinar is in a few weeks and we'll send you the information. But if you're curious, we've got some information on our YouTube page as well that has some of this information about informational interviews. But there's a formula for this, for reaching out to people that you don't know and getting help. And just want you to know this is a great option for the explore part and something that I think is absolutely essential. Brooke, anything to add about informational interviewing that I missed?
I would just say anecdotally, I have been where you are thinking about, informational interviews, and it can be intimidating. I will just add a really brief anecdote that once I went through this process of narrowing down what I was looking for, I went on LinkedIn and I found some folks with the job that I thought that I was interested in. And I sent some messages. I didn't know what to say even. I downloaded a template and I wanted to make it good. And I had success. People were very generous. Even though I didn't know them directly, I was able to surface some connections that were really helpful in, networking, building a network. I have made connections that I still maintain today with folks that I didn't know before I asked for an informational interview. So
thanks, Brooke. This is like one of those secrets that people kind of like don't talk about because it's an amazing way to build your network and get to know people. But it's one of those things that takes a little bit of skill. So we want you to be able to do it the right way. That webinar is coming up though, and we'll talk about it in a minute. So, okay, so we just talked about explore, right? We talked about knowing our strengths, knowing what we're good at. We talked a little bit about informational interviewing. But when you've got a better sense of yourself, it's time to move on to the narrow phase, which is when we make a couple of decisions, meaning we say, okay, I looked at my energy and engagement audit, and I think there's something in here about operations and project management. So let me do a little bit more research and narrowing in that area. So let's talk about what narrow means. Narrow means going a level deeper and creating kind of a short list of careers and roles and industries that just you're interested in, that you want to explore. You're not going to be held to this list. This list doesn't have to have the answer on it, right? It's not this high stakes list. It's just a little page in a journal where you're writing down jobs or industries or subject areas that are interesting to you. So there's a couple of ways that we can do this. One of the main ways that we recommend is that people create what's called a job vision board. And this is sort of like a Pinterest board for your job, for your future career. And so this involves finding job descriptions for roles that look interesting to you, or at least have something about them that you're attracted to. And when you've got those jobs, you can then run them through different software. So one of the softwares that I think is really helpful to run through is called the MC Skills Extractor. And we're going to put the link in the chat. But here's like, let me just kind of give you a little demo of this. So let me undo my screen here. So what you're seeing here is this is the MC Skills Extractor. This is that website that I was talking about. And so I went and found a job description. This is an operations job, a sales operations job in the Bay Area. And I just copied all of this and I pasted it in here. I pasted it in this on this web page right here. And what it generated for me on the right-hand side here was a list of skills that were in this job description. So sometimes reading job descriptions is fun, but other times it's really long. There's a lot of words. And so this is basically just a platform, a software that is crunching all the words in here and putting the words that show up the most at the top. So for example, in this job description, they're talking about analytical skills. They're talking about being detail oriented, about multitasking, right? So I'm starting to get a sense, okay, operations roles require some of these skills, right? So that's that tool, but let's go through this again. Like, what exactly am I talking about here? So what I want you to do is let's look at this first. Okay, so let's look at Joanna again. So Joanna did her engagement and energy audit, and we talked about how she likes organizing, she likes optimizing, she likes creating order, right? She figured that out by tracking her activities for a few days. And she also had some conversations with people in her network. She just kind of asked people questions like, what am I good at? You know, what do you do in your job? Like, you seem like you're also really good at organization. What do you do, right? So she kind of went around, did some of this work, and she identified project management and operations as two potential areas that are of interest to her: project management and operations. And she went to places like Indeed and LinkedIn.com and Glassdoor and Idealist. And she started just putting in the word like project manager or operations or program manager, right? She just started putting these words in and out spit, you know, hundreds and thousands of job descriptions that align with that title. And this is what Brooke was saying, like, there's so many out there. And she didn't necessarily need to look in her geographic region. She just put it in and looked all across the US. And then she started reading these job descriptions. And I know that I sound so crazy when I say this, but one of the most exciting things to do is to read job descriptions and learn about companies and learn about what they're looking for. And when I was looking for a job in the education space several years ago, that's what I did. I just put in different keywords into search engines for jobs, and I just read about what it meant to be a strategy consultant or to be an, program manager, or to do any of these titles that I was starting to be attracted to. And I read about them, and it kind of gave me inspiration. It also showed me what things I didn't like. So through reading these job descriptions and using that skills extractor tool, Joanna is able to see that she has some existing skills that help with operations and program management, right? She's organized, she has strong communication, she's good at developing systems and managing multiple projects at once. But then she starts to see that there are some skills that she still needs to build, right? She doesn't have those skills yet. Some of those are around specific project management methodologies that she saw mentioned in these job descriptions, or just more experience managing a project from start to finish, right? She has some experience, but maybe not enough. So she starts to see, oh, these are some skills that I might need to build if I want to go this route. And these are all the skills I already have that would help me be successful here. So, looking at job descriptions, looking at the skills that they require, comparing it to what skills you have, that's a part of this narrowing, right? That will help you to get to a couple of job descriptions or a couple of skills that are relevant and important to you. There's also just regular research. I mean, there's so much information online in the form of podcasts or blogs or articles or YouTube videos that just help you to better understand what it means to kind of explore some of these jobs that you've heard of in your head, right? That you might want to learn more about. And so just Googling around, going to YouTube, seeing what videos are out there, like There's so much online, day in the life videos, right? There's a lot out there. And then continuing to network and talk to people, right? If you start doing informational interviews and you realize, hey, I'm actually really interested in this like social media marketing space, then you can continue to talk to more people in social media and go deeper into that area and network further, right? And do more informational interviews in that one area that you've identified. But the point that I think where people get stuck is they get afraid to even just put a couple things out there on paper, right? A couple of ideas, because they don't know if it's going to work. They don't even know if it's the right things to put out there. But I think people stop themselves at that point when really you want to create a list of things that are interesting to you, and then you want to explore them, because that's really the only way that you're going to be able to know if something is right for you or not. So I want to talk a little bit about commit, because that is the third step here. So when you think about the third step, which is really about commitment, that means that you're thinking and choosing one or two or three of the things of your career options and actually committing to learning more about them. Okay. This is also where people get freaked out, because they're like, oh my God, I have to like actually sign up for something or actually commit to something when I'm not even sure if it's right for me. But through actually experimenting, you will figure out if something's right for you or not. So, you know, it's time in the commit phase, it's time to choose a couple of things to commit to and try out, right? And remember, you can always try something and return to the drawing board and say, nah, that like wasn't really for me. I wasn't really interested in that. And then go back and explore further. But you want to figure out what you don't like just as much as you want to figure out what you do like. And so a couple of ways that you can commit are by signing up for a program, signing up for a course, a certificate, an online training, even like signing up for a webinar, right? That's an hour is a commitment, right? Because you're committing to learning about something in a deeper way so that you can know if it's something to pursue. And I see something in the chat from Diana, which I'll just bring up. Like, what if that thing that you want to try is expensive? And that's a really good point, because a lot of these programs are expensive. I think that there's a couple things you can think about when you're thinking about commitment. If something is really, really far out there, like, oh, I think I want to pursue being a DJ, like that might be something that's expensive to do a training program in, and it might not be anything related to what you're currently doing. And it could be a really big risk, right? Because you're not really sure where it's going to go. It could be expensive. It's totally outside your comfort zone. But if you're looking and you're saying, you know what, I actually want to try this thing, and even if I don't end up pursuing it, it's going to be valuable for my current skill set. So for example, let's say you might be interested in project management. If you learn project management, you're only helping yourself and advancing your career, even if it's not necessarily a job that you take, because there are some skills and some learning out there that really just helps you to be a better professional. And so I think you have to look at the options that you're considering and figure out how much of a risk it is to invest in it. So if something is very expensive, that's a question. But I promise you that you could even find some things that are lighter weight, less expensive options or free options before committing to the more expensive one. So that's where YouTube comes in. That's where, other platforms that offer tiny little courses, right, that are free online, that just give you a hint and a taste. And then you can decide, okay, I have a little more information. Let me go and spend more money on that larger offering. For some people that don't want to necessarily do a training program, it might be valuable to talk to your manager and say, hey, like, is there any way that I can get more experience in digital marketing in my job? Sometimes people in your organization could give you a passion project or a small project within your current role that helps you to experiment with something new. So you don't have to necessarily leave your company, or in order to pursue something that you might be interested in, maybe your company will give you that opportunity to try out something. So I want you to get creative and think about ways where you can commit to something and try it out, and then get the information you need to move forward or not. So in a very quick way, I kind of went through this whole cycle. And there's a lot of nuance here. And sometimes people have to go around it 3 or 4 times, right? But this is a process that I hope can anchor you and help to center you on a couple of steps that you can take here. One of the main steps you can take is to come to our workshop series, because these are all free webinars that we're offering in the months of January, February, March, and April. And we're going through really critical topics. We're going to go through networking and informational interviews. We're going to go through optimizing your resume, salary negotiation. We're going to go through a lot of topics. And this is also a way for you to reflect on kind of what you want and what you're looking for, in addition to the research that you need to do on your own. Another great way to explore is to, obviously Pathstream offers education programs, but we also have enrollment advisors that can talk to you for 10 minutes, 15 minutes about what our programs offer. And sometimes talking to a human and hearing, what is it that these programs are like, and, asking questions is a really great way to also investigate if this is an investment you want to make. So if you want to email enrollments@pathstream.com, that's a great opportunity to talk to one of our enrollment advisors about the programs that we have, because the theme I've been saying is knowledge is power here, right? And it can feel intimidating when we sit back and when we kind of sit in the fact that we don't know, instead of actually taking action in small ways to uncover our truths and our strengths and what we really enjoy.